I love Marge.
You love me. You're not marrying me.
Tom, I don't love you.
No, I don't mean that as a threat.
To be honest, I'm a little relieved you're going. I think we've seen enough of each other for a while.
It's Sunday morning on CBS. And here again is Jane Pauley.
Actor Jude Law in The Talented Mr. Ripley, the movie that made him a star 25 years ago. Since then, the Englishman has racked up dozens of major credits. In his latest film, he plays one of the most infamous kings in history. He tells Lee Cowan all about it in our Sunday Profile.
If you've ever wondered if a person can really remain anonymous in New York City, Jude Law just might be proof.
Do you get recognized a lot, or do you try to...
No. That depends.
It depends, because just which of his varied looks would you recognize? He's played playboys.
Everybody should have one talent. What's yours?
Witty writers.
Every word matters.
No, it doesn't.
They're vital. Vital.
Fairy tale pirates.
Speak not to me of hands, Smee.
And storied sidekicks.
I've been reviewing my notes on our exploits over the last 7 months. Would you like to know my conclusion?
At 51, Jude Law rarely retraces the cobblestones of his past, and yet, on this day, bathed in the red of the Ethel Barrymore Theater in the heart of Broadway,
Most extraordinary.
he couldn't help it.
All these memories come flooding back, sitting there, waiting to be revisited.
It was here back in 1995 when Law, just 23, made his Broadway debut.
I remember going to the theatre manager, though, saying, like, do I pay my rent for the next month? And he was like, I don't know, kid.
The play was Indiscretions.
But I should really...
No. You lead the way.
It earned 9 Tony nominations, including one for Law's performance.
Did you think, when you started out, that the stage seemed a more probable career than movies?
Absolutely. Film felt so distant, so abstract from my life in London, in southeast London. Alas, poor Yorick. I knew him.
Hamlet is almost a rite of passage for an English stage actor, and when Law played it, he got another Tony nod.
You said Hamlet was one of the hardest things you've ever done? One of the most challenging things?
Certainly. You're on stage for about 85, 90% of the play, I would say. You have these 8 enormous soliloquies. Being scared of taking on something like that is natural, and part of that should be the motivation for taking it on.
Playing royals seems part of his acting DNA.
Hail King Vortigern! King Vortigern!
He's played fictional rulers, renowned rulers, and currently one of the most reviled, King Henry VIII, husband to 6 wives, 2 of whom he had executed.
They know what would happen. We would have to have their head cut off. I have a theory that he was a romantic, really fell in love, and had no idea, of course, that his love life would go down this path of wreck and ruin and murder.
He's unrecognizable in Firebrand, the story of Henry's last wife, Katherine Parr.
Her death is on your soul.
James! James! Take the horse.
I'm sorry.
What?
I'm so sorry. I don't know.
Any of the actions, whether they be aggressive, grotesque, lewd, they had to come from a reason, and they had to come, I think, from a sense of truth. It's always about that, really.
The vengeful King Henry VIII.
Part of finding that truth was getting at the humanity of just who Henry was. He was a man of war, yes.
You realize what we dragged these poor beasts into.
Right. But here at the Arms and Armor Gallery at New York's Metropolitan Museum of Art, curator Edward Hunter pointed Law to a suit of armor actually worn by the king himself that shows evidence of the crippling pain in his legs, probably from a jousting accident.
Unlike many of the other armors around the galleries, it doesn't go all the way down on his legs.
No.
He chose this armor specifically for comfort.
The open wounds were exactly around there, they think, weren't they, on the lower legs?
Couldn't get on my horse. In front of all my men, it was humiliating.
That pain must have, his temperament probably rose and fell. And I think that really colored who he was.
Growing up, the arts were everywhere. His parents were both teachers, but also performers. To them, Law's entrance into the arts wasn't a surprise, but his ensuing fame was.
What do they think of all your success? They've been around to see it all, which is great. Some people don't have that.
I guess, yes, indeed. I think it was a big thing for them to sort of understand there's a certain public ownership that you suddenly feel you give up to this public persona.
Actor Jude Law testified at Britain's phone hacking trial on Monday.
In the mid-2000s, he lost all ownership of his private life. For years, his phone was being hacked by the tabloid news of the world, and every private conversation became public.
I mean, it seemed like who you were and the relationship you were in. I mean, there was really, at some point, it felt like there had to be nothing left to write about your personal life.
I certainly felt like that. At the time, was like weathering a storm, and it dissipates and you learn from it and you adapt and your life moves on. What's been hard, I think, is in the UK, the media have rehashed stories that are 20, 25, some of them 30 years old. They'd been through every garment in my laundry basket, and there was no more dirty
No more dirty laundry.
It was like, that's done.
Not surprisingly, these days, he and his current wife, Philippa Cohn, try to live a very private life.
We're on a great adventure together, and I feel hugely supported by her. Being a dad is a big part of that.
They have 2 young children, adding to the 5 Law had before. Having a famous dad is one thing. Having one voted as the sexiest man alive, well, that's another.
Come here. You're beautiful.
He was almost too good-looking, one might argue.
It sounds like even you at sometimes were wondering if roles were because of the way you looked or because of your performance.
It's a funny one, isn't it? Because as soon as I engage in that sort of consideration, it's like I'm acknowledging that I have really good looks.
Right.
I've got to a point now where I look back at photos of myself, which I know I don't look like anymore, and I am able to say, oh no, I was really pretty. I was really, really pretty when I was in my 20s. Amanda, are you by any chance at all into hot chocolate?
He could have made a living doing rom-coms, but he planned accordingly to do just the opposite.
I found my own path to try and really establish myself as an actor as opposed to a heartthrob. It felt like the long game.
He started seeking out roles portraying the unfortunate, the seemingly irredeemable.
I'm pathetic. I don't belong here. I'm a monster. I'm a dinosaur.
I'm something of a rarity.
How's that?
I shoot the dead. Dead bodies.
Henry VIII is just the latest in a long line of the tortured and textured characters he so enjoys inhabiting. And while many think they may know Jude Law, the person, he still says most haven't got a clue.
I quite like there always to be an element of surprise, that people don't know me well enough to be able to say, oh, this is just like him, or...
You don't really want people to know the private side.
I'd rather they didn't. I think that's part of the fun of being an actor. There's a magic to it that you can't always dissect or understand until you're sort of in it, doing it, and then you reflect and think, how did that come about?